There is a kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix. You can rest for 8 hours, wake up on time, drink your coffee, and still feel drained before the day even begins. This exhaustion does not come from effort or movement. It does not live in the muscles or the bones. It lies quietly in the mind. It is the weight of too many thoughts pressing at the same moment, each one demanding attention, each one pretending to be urgent. The mind becomes crowded, not with people you can see, but with ideas, worries, memories, and imagined futures all speaking at once. No single thought is clear, yet the noise never stops. This is what mind overload feels like. From the outside, everything looks normal. You move, you speak, you function. But inside, there is constant pressure in silence. Thoughts race without direction, burning energy without producing peace. The brain keeps scanning, calculating, replaying, predicting. It does not pause. It does not rest. It runs as if something terrible will happen if it slows down. This is not productivity. This is survival mode activated with no real threat present. Mind overload creates a strange contradiction. You feel mentally busy, yet emotionally empty. You think all the time, yet nothing feels resolved. You try to focus, but your attention jumps from one thought to another. Even moments that should feel calm feel heavy. Relaxation feels difficult, sometimes even uncomfortable, because silence gives space for thoughts to grow louder. The mind fills every gap, every pause, every quiet second with noise. This state slowly drains you, not in an obvious way, but in a deep, quiet way. Motivation fades, patience shortens, small tasks feel overwhelming, simple decisions feel heavy. You are not lazy, and you're not weak. Your system is overloaded. The mind was not designed to process endless input without rest. When it is pushed too far, it sends signals. Fatigue, tension, and mental fog are not failures. They are warnings. Mind overload is what happens when thinking stops serving you and starts controlling you. It is the moment when awareness turns into obsession, when planning turns into worry, when reflection turns into rumination, and most people live in this state without even realizing it, believing that this constant mental noise is just how life is supposed to feel. Overthinking often disguises itself as intelligence. It convinces you that thinking more means understanding more, and that understanding more means control. The mind tells you that if you analyze every detail, replay every moment, and predict every possible outcome, you will avoid pain and mistakes. But this belief slowly becomes a trap. Overthinking does not bring clarity. It creates pressure. It turns simple thoughts into endless loops with no exit. The mind begins to live outside the present moment. It travels constantly between what already happened and what might happen next. Past conversations replay again and again, searching for errors that cannot be corrected. Future scenarios are imagined in detail, most of them negative, most of them unreal. The body reacts to these thoughts as if they are real threats. Stress becomes constant. The nervous system stays alert. The mind never fully rests. This is why overthinking feels so exhausting. You are always mentally active, even when your life is calm. There is no real danger, yet your system behaves as if something bad is about to happen. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels wrong. When nothing demands your attention, your mind creates something to worry about. It fills every quiet moment with noise. Overthinking also steals your ability to enjoy the present. You may be physically present, but mentally absent. You listen, but you do not fully hear. You experience moments, but they pass without leaving a trace. Joy feels distant, not because it disappeared, but because your mind is too busy preparing for problems that may never exist. The most dangerous part is that overthinking feels responsible. It feels like you are doing your job as a thinker, as an adult, as someone who cares. But responsibility is not endless mental tension. Responsibility includes knowing when to pause, A mind that never stops thinking slowly loses its ability to think clearly. Overthinking is not strength. It is fear pretending to be logic. And until the mind learns that safety does not come from constant analysis, it will continue to exhaust itself, chasing answers that thinking alone cannot provide. At the center of mind overload, there is almost always fear. Not loud fear, and not panic, but a quiet fear that hides behind logic. Fear of making the wrong decision. Fear of losing control. Fear of being judged, failing, or missing something important. The mind believes that if it keeps thinking, it can prevent these outcomes. It tries to protect you by staying alert all the time. But protection slowly turns into imprisonment. The mind starts acting like a guard that never sleeps. It watches every thought, every emotion, every possibility. It scans for danger even when life is calm. This constant vigilance creates tension in the body and confusion in the mind. You are not responding to reality anymore. You are responding to imagined threats. And because the mind cannot tell the difference between real and imagined danger, it keeps the nervous system in a permanent state of alert. This is where control becomes an illusion. You think you are in control because you are thinking so much. But real control does not come from exhausting the mind. It comes from clarity. And clarity does not exist in a crowded mental space. The more you try to control everything through thought, the more anxious you become. The mind tightens its grip, and peace moves further away. There is also a deep misunderstanding about responsibility. Many people believe that if they stop thinking, things will fall apart. They associate rest with carelessness. They believe that silence means ignoring problems. But a tired mind solves nothing. A mind under pressure creates distorted conclusions. It exaggerates risks and minimizes solutions. Rest is not a luxury. It is a requirement for clear thinking. When the mind is allowed to pause, it resets. When it is forced to run endlessly, it breaks down. Mental overload is not a personal failure. It is a system responding exactly as it was trained. A system taught that constant thinking equals safety. But safety never arrives through overthinking. It arrives through presence, trust, and learning when to let go. The moment you stop trying to control everything mentally, something shifts. The noise softens. The body relaxes. You realize that not every thought deserves attention. Some thoughts are not warnings. They are habits, and habits can change. Mind overload slowly disconnects you from the present moment. You are physically here, but mentally somewhere else. You eat without tasting. You listen without truly hearing. You move through your day on autopilot while your attention is trapped inside your head. Life continues around you, but it feels distant, like you are watching it through a screen. This disconnection does not happen suddenly. It builds quietly, thought after thought, until presence becomes rare. The present moment becomes uncomfortable because it has no distractions. When there is nothing demanding your attention, the mind fills the space with noise. It pulls memories from the past and worries from the future to avoid stillness. Silence feels heavy because silence exposes how tired the mind really is. Instead of resting, it searches for problems to solve, questions to answer, and scenarios to prepare for. This constant mental escape creates a sense of emptiness. Even when your life is full, something feels missing. You achieve things, but the satisfaction fades quickly. You experience good moments, but they pass without leaving warmth behind. It is not because life lacks meaning. It is because your mind is rarely present enough to receive it. Joy requires attention. Peace requires presence. Overthinking steals both. The body feels this disconnection deeply. When the mind is never present, the body stays tense. Breathing becomes shallow. The chest feels tight. The nervous system stays alert, waiting for something to happen. This is why mind overload often comes with physical symptoms. Headaches, fatigue, and restlessness are not random. They are messages. The body is asking for the mind to slow down. The tragedy is that peace only exists in the present moment. The past cannot be fixed by replaying it. The future cannot be controlled by worrying about it. Yet overthinking keeps you trapped in mental time travel. You relive what is gone and rehearse what may never come. Meanwhile, the only moment that is real keeps slipping away unnoticed. Presence is not passive. It is active awareness. It is choosing to be where you are instead of where your fears want you to go. When the mind learns to return to the present, something changes. The noise fades. The body relaxes. Life feels lighter. Not because problems disappear, but because you are finally here to live it. Breaking mind overload does not begin by fighting thoughts. Fighting only gives them more power. The mind is not calmed by force. It is calmed by understanding. Many people try to stop thinking, but stopping is impossible. Thoughts appear naturally. What can change is the relationship you have with them. Instead of chasing every thought, you learn to observe it. You notice it, and you let it pass without reacting. Not every thought is important. Not every thought is a warning. Many thoughts are simply habits created by repetition. The mind learned to overthink through practice, and it can learn to slow down the same way. Awareness is the first step. When you see a thought clearly, it loses some of its control. You realize that a thought is not a command. It is not a fact. It is a mental event that comes and goes. This shift feels uncomfortable at first. The mind is used to constant activity. When it slows down, it feels unsafe, like something is missing. Silence can feel threatening because the mind associates movement with control. But discomfort is not danger. When you stay with the silence instead of escaping it, the nervous system begins to calm. Breathing deepens. The body softens. The mind starts to realize that nothing bad happens when it rests. Letting go does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing where your attention goes. You still think when thinking is needed. You still plan when planning is useful. But you stop living inside your thoughts. You create space between you and your mental noise. In that space, clarity grows naturally. Mind overload slowly fades when you stop feeding it. When you do not react to every thought, the mind learns that it does not need to produce so many of them. The volume lowers. The pace slows. You begin to experience moments of quiet that feel unfamiliar, but relieving. This is not a quick fix. It is a practice. Some days the mind will be loud again. That does not mean you failed. It means you noticed. Each time you choose presence over rumination, you weaken the habit of overthinking. Over time, the mind becomes lighter, calmer, and more focused. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it to rest. Mind overload is often fueled by carrying too many identities at the same time. You try to be everything at once. Productive, successful, calm, strong, always improving. The mind keeps track of who you should be, who you were, and who you think you must become. This constant self-monitoring creates pressure that never shuts off. You are not only living life, you are evaluating yourself while living it. Comparison plays a silent role here. The mind looks outward and measures constantly. Other people progress faster. Other people seem calmer. Other people appear more confident. These comparisons feed the idea that you are behind. The mind responds by thinking harder, planning more, pushing further. But comparison does not motivate peace. It creates urgency without direction. It convinces you that rest is dangerous because someone else is moving forward. This is how the mind becomes crowded. Expectations stack on top of expectations. Goals multiply. Standards rise without limits. Nothing feels enough because the finish line keeps moving. Even achievements feel temporary. The moment you reach one target, the mind presents another. Satisfaction disappears quickly because the mind is already focused on what comes next. Mind overload thrives in this environment. There is no pause, no arrival, only pressure to keep up. The mind forgets how to appreciate progress because it is obsessed with distance. It forgets how to feel grounded because it is always leaning forward. This constant leaning creates imbalance. You are never fully where you are. Letting go does not mean giving up ambition. It means choosing direction instead of overload. A focused mind understands limits. It knows that energy is finite. When you spread attention across too many demands, nothing receives your full presence. Depth is replaced by noise. Movement is replaced by stress. A calmer mind chooses what matters most and releases the rest. It understands that growth does not require constant pressure. Growth requires recovery. When you stop trying to carry every version of yourself at once, the mind lightens. You regain clarity. You move forward with intention instead of anxiety. And for the first time in a long while, progress feels aligned instead of exhausting. There is a quiet strength in mental simplicity. A calm mind is not an empty mind. It is a disciplined one. It knows when to engage and when to step back. It understands that constant thinking is not a requirement for intelligence or success. Simplicity creates space, and space allows the mind to function clearly. When the noise fades, insight has room to appear. Many people fear simplicity because they confuse it with stagnation. They believe that slowing down means falling behind. But the opposite is true. A mind that is constantly overloaded cannot see clearly. It reacts instead of choosing. It rushes instead of deciding. Simplicity restores perspective. It allows you to see what truly matters and what only pretends to matter. When the mind becomes simpler, intuition grows stronger. You stop forcing answers and start noticing them. Decisions feel lighter because they come from clarity instead of pressure. You trust yourself more because you are no longer questioning every step. Loses its grip when the mind is not exhausted. Confidence does not come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing enough and moving forward calmly. Mental simplicity also changes how you experience time. Moments feel fuller. Conversations feel deeper. Silence feels safe instead of threatening. You begin to enjoy stillness because it no longer feels empty. It feels grounded. The mind learns that it does not need to fill every moment with thought. Presence becomes natural instead of forced. This simplicity does not remove challenges from life. Problems still exist. Uncertainty still exists. But your relationship with them changes. You stop fighting everything internally before it even happens. You deal with what is real. When it is real, this saves enormous energy. Energy that can be used to create, to connect, and to live fully. A simple mind does not mean a small life. It means a focused one. It means choosing depth over overload, clarity over noise, and direction over constant movement. When you allow the mind to simplify, you give yourself permission to breathe again. You stop surviving mentally and start living consciously. This is where peace begins to feel stable, not because life becomes perfect, but because the mind is no longer at war with itself. And in that quiet stability, you discover that clarity was always available. It was just buried under too much thinking. Too much thinking is not who you are. It is something your mind learned to do over time. It became a habit through repetition, pressure, and the belief that constant mental activity equals safety. But habits are not permanent. What is learned can be unlearned. And awareness is always the first step toward change. The moment you recognize mind overload, you are no longer fully controlled by it. Many people believe they need to solve everything immediately. They believe clarity must come before rest. But clarity often arrives after rest, not before it. When the mind is tired, it creates urgency where none exists. It tells you that you are falling behind. That time is running out. That you must think harder. But this voice is not truth. It is exhaustion speaking. You do not need to understand everything today. You do not need to fix your entire life right now. Some answers reveal themselves only when you stop chasing them. When the mind softens, perspective returns. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. Not because the problems changed, but because your relationship with them did. A quieter mind allows you to reconnect with yourself. You begin to hear your own needs instead of constant mental demands. You feel when you need rest, when you need action, and when you need nothing at all. This reconnection builds trust. You stop doubting every instinct. You move with intention instead of hesitation. Peace is not the absence of thought. It is the absence of unnecessary struggle with thought. Thoughts will still come. Life will still challenge you. But you no longer carry every worry as if it is your responsibility. You learn to respond instead of react. You learn to pause instead of panic. In that pause, something important becomes clear. Life was never asking you to think harder. It was asking you to be present, to feel what is real instead of rehearsing what is not, to live one moment at a time instead of 10 imagined futures at once. When the mind is no longer overloaded, life feels lighter, not perfect, not effortless, but real. And in that reality, you finally have the space to breathe, to choose, and to live with clarity instead of constant noise.